U svetu društvenih medija u kome danas živimo više smo nego ikada do sada izloženi raznim vrstama sajber napada ili elektronskih ometanja. To je trenutak kada savremeni svet postavlja više pitanja. Kako da se zaštitimo, od koga, kako da sprečimo napade. NATO i FBI posebnu pažnju poklanjaju borbi protiv sajber kriminala. Jedan klik na kompjuteru ili mobilnom telefonu može da dovede u opasnost bilo koga.
38% smartfonova je izloženo sajber kriminalu. Evo samo razmislite tome koliko se puta koristi, koliko ste puta bili na internetu. Evo još jedan podatak je 1 u 8 legalnih i normalnih sajtova ima neku kritičku infrastrukturu ranjivu. A tu se podrazumeva bankovni podaci o osobi koja je vlasnik tih računa i raznorazni podaci same osobe se nalaze tu koji nisu zaštićeni. To je 1 od 8. Koliko sajtova pogledate dnevno, koliko aplikacija otvorite dnevno, koliko vesti pročitate dnevno, slučajno kliknete na neki link i šta se može se desiti. 96% telefona koji se izgube imaju njihovu sigurnost provaljenu. Sve podatke koje imate će biti izgubljeni i neko će moći da ih koristi. Sad, da li je to nešto što ne treba se zanemari? Ja apsolutno mislim da nije. I mi treba da pokušamo da nađemo mehanizme odbrane od takvih napada, makar to trajalo godinu, 2, 3, ali moramo polako da se orijentišemo to, jer se svi napadi u ovom trenutnom svetu svode preko interneta i cyberspace.
Our cyber coalition exercise, which took place in Estonia this time, like it did last year, which is a continuing exercise now to try to organize or to find out how different national administrations and ministries and agencies organize themselves among each other in case of a very serious cyber attack. That has been an ongoing exercise for quite a number of years. I think they started in 2012 for the first time. And so this is an ongoing, this is one of the effects of what NATO started doing when it became aware of the seriousness of the danger of cyber attacks, which basically didn't take place before 2007-2008, when we experienced, or when Estonia experienced its first big cyber attack on itself as a country, when NATO became aware that this may be a very serious attack on all of us. And when in 2008, during the Georgia war, we experienced a very precise use of cyberspace by the Russian military, then also that added to the raising of the awareness that NATO needs to do something about this. Now, the point still is, what is NATO's role in this? And this is an ongoing, not so much a technical or a technological struggle, it's a political structure.
Different countries have different rules on how to share information, and they have privacy laws. So that's part of my job as a liaison agent, is to go out and talk to our partners and find ways that we can share information so we can prosecute our cases. Are probably aware the FBI is historically a domestic law enforcement organization. However, we do have a national security responsibility, and we do some international outreach. Our primary focus is counterterrorism, and it will continue to be so for the foreseeable future. Another high priority that we have is cybercrime. We've made this a priority, and we've invested a lot of resources to get the training and the people required to persecute cybercrime.
Elektronska obrada podataka i komunikacija. Na internetu to je prostor koji se pokriva različitom elektronskom opremom ili podrazumeva sve što radimo preko interneta. Iako su podaci i informacije nevidljivi, nisu nezaštićeni. I pored čitavog vida zaštite, razvijen je sistem koji može da dođe do podataka koji su sami zaštićeni. Nezakonit pokušaj da se dobiju informacije koje su zaštićene bilo od samog korisnika ili neke organizacije u stvari je cyber napad. I NATO i FBI odavno su razvili sistem odbrane.
The alliance as such is 28 nations, and whatever the alliance as an organization does or will do needs consensus among 28 nations. Allies do lots of things with each other, using allied procedures, using allied habits, using allied consultation mechanisms, but not necessarily involving the alliance as an organization as such. So the alliance is helpful for action among allies, but that does not necessarily engage the alliance as an organization. I'd like to make that distinction right at the very start, because that is often sometimes something that confuses the discussion.
Cybercrime is different from other crimes because a lot more than other activities, it's very likely that a criminal is located in one country, the facilities he used to execute his crime is in another country, and victims are in a third country. We have challenges posed by this international and other jurisdictional boundaries, so that's why we have this outreach program. And the FBI Legal Attaché program is created to facilitate these relationships and information sharing.
And of course, whenever we talk about cyber war, everybody knows what we're talking about, because that's a very sexy subject, and everybody has internet, and everybody knows what we're dealing with. Well, no. The role that NATO plays in this is a very essential one, but a very limited one. This put at the beginning of my remarks, I would like to just point your attention to the fact that the Lisbon strategic concept of 2010 for the first time defined the new security environment of which cyber security challenges are an essential part. So as of 2010, the organization, NATO, is tasked to work on cybersecurity challenges. And it is from then on that NATO has started to develop cyber defense policies, which means official documents of the alliance, the first one being adopted in 2011 by the Ministers of Defense, and now the enhanced cyber defense policy being adopted this year and endorsed by the Wales Summit.
Cybercrime is an imminent, it's an impending threat. I've got some figures from recent statements that the FBI released in 2014, so they're reasonably accurate. Cybercrime costs up to $113 billion annually. This includes direct costs as well as costs involved with remediating cyber-related events. With our partners, we talk to malware researchers and security consultants. We can see some artifacts of when computers are compromised. So we have a rough number on the number of computers compromised each year. Our estimate is 375 million computers are infected every year. That's more than 1 million victims per day, and that's 12 victims per second, so it is a big threat. FBI Cyber's division, our mandate has evolved over the years, and now we're focusing on cyber intrusions. Our goal is to identify, disrupt, and analyze the largest and most dangerous criminal networks and botnets. And once again, in order to work cyber crimes, you need to talk to your international partners. You have to develop relationships with private industry.
Dakle, očigledno je da i NATO organizacija i FBI cyber odbranu svrstavaju među prioritete. Od 11. septembra to je deo zajedničke odbrane. Drugim rečima, ako neko napadne neku od zemalja članica, to podrazumeva da se u odbranu uključe svi ostali članovi alijanse.
Basically, cyber defense questions touch upon the three core tasks that NATO has been asked to care about, which is collective defense, crisis management, and cooperative security. And I will go into detail a little bit further on. Collective defense, because the question has always been from the very start, and it has been somewhat clarified at the World Summit, when does a cyber attack constitute an aggression, an act of aggression? when does the alliance discuss and think that Article 5 is applicable? The clarification that took place in Wales, and the only clarification that can take place, was a cyber attack can constitute an aggression that can call for a decision by the North Atlantic Council to invoke Article 5. That ambiguity, however, remains, and it has always been there. It has always been there for any kind of attack that may occur against any of our member states. That ambiguity of what the North Atlantic Council decides to do will remain an ambiguity, but clearly it has been decided that a cyber attack can reach such a threshold that Article 5 may be applicable. In this context, please remember that there is also Article 4 of the North Atlantic Treaty. And that is that Article 4 which calls for consultation, which calls for the NAC to become active whenever one member state feels threatened and calls for consultation. That consultation mechanism has gotten increased importance. So that, please look at these two articles in the context.
Što se tiče Srbije, mi zakone kao zakoni imamo, oni su sprovedeni, mi imamo slične zakone kao Sjedinjene Američke Države. Naš problem je kako te zakone sprovesti. Mi imamo problem sa izjavama koje smo vidjeli, na primjer, u Walesu, ali dobili smo, kao što čuli od gospodina doktora Detlefa Pula, da je sad po članu 5 može da se cyber napad, da se to karakteriše na neku članicu NATO zemlje. To vam je samo predstava koliko je ozbiljan problem i koja pretnja može da nas u nekoj bliskoj budućnosti zadesi ako se ne pozabavimo ozbiljnom kreiranjem i implementacijom zakona o cyber odbrani i čuvanjem podataka.
The cyber world is constantly evolving, so when I say back in time, I'm saying 2010. There was a family of malware, it was called the Zeus malware, which was fairly commonplace in 2010. They had many different configurations. This malware was sold on criminal forums, and this malware could be customized for specific tasks. For instance, you could buy a variant that was designed to pull credit card information, and so for credit card fraud, it was good for them. They could buy that. Criminal organizations would offer support. If they were new to the business, they would show them how to use this. They had another variant that was just made for spam emailing. So if you wanted to take advantage of a compromised computer to send out spam and sell that service, you could do that. You could create more. You could use by another version that was customized for denial of service. So this was the original Zeus was widely distributed, and many different criminal organizations used it, and we viewed it as a tool. Because it was so prevalent, even though it was only a semi-sophisticated tool, we targeted the users of this tool. We had a successful operation which ended in 2010. Since it was so widely used, we arrested 100 people, and we had estimates of $70 million in damages. So that was a successful operation in 2010.
Crisis management is concerned insofar as whatever we do is done under the headings of protection and resilience, which means that we do everything we can to make our own systems as safe as possible, which means, if you think in terms of deterrence, that to make it as costly as possible for any intruder, any possible intruder into our networks. And at the same time, raising resilience of our systems, of our information systems, meaning that when a breach has taken place, when an intrusion has taken place, and they have taken place, they take place all the time, they will continue to take place, that we will be able to repair the damage as quickly as possible, so that so to speak, that the high investment that an intruder has to undertake in order to breach into our systems becomes very quickly useless because we are able to repair the system. That's the philosophy, of course, but that needs to be tested. So that's the principle that relates the question of cyber defense to crisis management and cooperative security, which is the cooperation with partner countries. And remember, excuse me, the 28 NATO nations have 41 formalized partner countries. That's quite a big number of countries that are linked with each other in this network. So we enhance cooperation with these partner countries on all these issues.
After this law enforcement takedown, Zeus was modified by malware creators. So we saw this new variant. This variant was called the Game Over Zeus variant. It was GOZ. It was significant to us for a couple of reasons. It wasn't widely distributed like the previous versions of Zeus. I mean, from what we saw that one family or one group controlled this, and they used it for financial gain. They did not sell this to other people, and because it was so sophisticated, they kept it tightly held. Sophisticated for a couple of reasons. One reason is that traditionally for bot networks, they had a single command and controller, a limited number of command and controls. If you could envision a bot network as a big network of compromised computers, typically they would reach out to a controller who would tell them what to do and direct their activities. Traditionally in law enforcement, when we wanted to stop this type of organization, we'd identify the head and we cut it off. It's like a snake. Sometimes it had multiple heads, but if you could identify the control points, we'd identify those and disrupt them, and we could take the network offline. Game Over Zeus, or GOZ as they like to call it, was a lot more sophisticated. Instead of having a single command and control, it was distributed. All the infected computers could speak to each other. So if you cut off one head, another head would grow in its place. It was like a cyber nightmare. And if you managed to cut off all the heads, what it would do, it would slow down for a little while, and at a predetermined time and place, it would reach out to the internet and try to contact its controllers to get more control. So it was really hard to kill. It was sophisticated for a couple other reasons. It was created to help evade two-factor authentication. And you are probably aware with single-factor authentication is, let's say you were going to go to a bank and you were going to log in. You'd supply your username and a password, and now you're validated, you're able to do your business. Banks have started a two-factor authentication thing where you needed a second form of identification. Maybe this was a code that was provided to you by a second email account or by a telephone line. The Game Over Zeus was able to intercept this second communication. So even though you had two-factor authentication, they were able to compromise your bank account.
U periodu od 2012. do 2013. broj napada na lične podatke na mrežama se utrostručio. Brojke govore da je u godini za nama bilo ugroženo više od pola milijardi komunikacija na internetu. Praksa FBI-a beleži više slučajeva.
The first one is a composite materials company in the Western District of Pennsylvania. It lost $198,000 in one transaction. This was an unauthorized wire transfer, and it was using compromised bank credentials that were stolen using GOZ malware. The second one is an Indian tribe in Washington. It lost $277,000 in an unauthorized wire transaction. Third one, it was an assisted living facility in eastern Pennsylvania. It lost $190,000, and these are all compromised using a compromised banking credentials. The fourth one is more significant because it involved a bank, and banks make larger transactions. In one incident, this regional bank in northern Florida lost up to almost $7 million in one transfer. When we did the indictment, we looked at the damages attributed to this activity, and it was over $100 million.
We have three smart defense projects. You may remember we have the smart defense initiative. Three projects are dealing with cyber defense. They are dealing with creating an information sharing platform and capabilities in training, etc. We have enhanced our capacities to deal with that issue by improving and continuing to improve education, training, curricula, exercises, evaluation procedures, all turning around intrusions into our information network. We have the Cyber Coalition exercise. I talked about this. We will integrate cyber elements in all future exercises that take place. Already in our in our conflict management exercise, which also takes place every year, cyber elements are being integrated. So this is being a normal part of things. The Estonian government was kind enough to offer to us their cyber range, which is a facility to train on how to mitigate or to deal with these issues as a first step towards establishing a whole network of cyber ranges throughout NATO countries. We are developing courses at NATO schools, and of course we have the Cooperative Center of Excellence in Tallinn, which, as I said, is not a NATO institution by itself, but is accredited by NATO and but is run by the nations that support it. And we have also established and streamlined the governance structure to deal with these issues. We have now a Cyber Defense Committee at NATO, which reports directly to the NAC and which kind of leads the political governance of cyber defense in general. We have the Cyber Defense Management Board, which is responsible to coordinate all cyber defense activities throughout the different NATO bodies that are responsible for that. We have the NATO Consultation, Control and Command Board, NC3, which is responsible for the technical and the implementation aspects of it. They acquire the necessary installations and take care of them. We have the NATO Communications and Informations Agency, NCIA, which is responsible for operating these different capabilities together with the military authorities. And we have, of course, the NATO Cyber Incident Response Capability, which is, again, that capability that intervenes if and when there is an intrusion that is severe enough to not be able to be dealt with by technical means only.
Typically, most people have computer accounts, we don't have access to make $200,000 transactions. So how are they going to make money? How did this criminal network make money with regular people? What we found is they were using the CryptoLocker malware. And I'll go into exactly what it does, but you can get CryptoLocker in a variety of ways. One way is the same way you could get this Game Over Zeus. You click the wrong link on an email, or you go to a website and you click a link. Another way you could get CryptoLocker was with a variant of the Game Over Zeus functionality. If you were infected with Game Over Zeus, there was a function to where if you're infected, they could reach out and get additional malware. So not only are you infected with Zeus, it could go out and pull this CryptoLocker malware. And I'll go a little into what happens when you get infected with CryptoLocker. Once activated, this software will find files on your computer and it would encrypt it. And so you wouldn't be able to access it. I mean, which is great if everyone does their backup, but not everyone backs up as regularly as they should. And it would traverse the network, so any computers that are connected to your computer would also get infected. And you get a little pop-up screen. I don't know if you can see it in here. It would just say your files are encrypted, and if you want it back, send a ransom using Bitcoin or some other electronic currency to this address. And the amounts they asked for were relatively small. It was like $500, $750, and a lot of people paid it. And I got some examples of CryptoLocker damages. And again, this is from our indictment. The first example, we had an insurance company in Pennsylvania. One of the employees clicked on an infected link, and he was connected to his insurance company's computers, and they got infected. They were able to recover from backup, but their business was impacted for a day. They had to send their employees home. They estimate damages to be $70,000 for this one incident. Second one was a restaurant operator in Florida. He thought he was getting an internal email. He clicked the link and he was infected. And of course, a lot of the files associated with the restaurant were infected. And when they were infected, they were encrypted. They were able to remediate, but the total cost association with remediation was $30,000. The third one is interesting because it was a police department. It was a smaller police department in Massachusetts. Somebody connected to the network, they got infected with CryptoLocker, and the police department's files were encrypted. The data that was encrypted was 7 years worth of mugshots. It was investigative material, and it was stuff that was essential for the persecution of crimes. And they made the decision that they couldn't lose this data, so they actually paid the ransom. It was like $750. And even more surprisingly, they got the key back, so they were able to get their data.
Samo koliko puta se plaćaju računi preko interneta, koliko puta pogledate samo stanje, pa vi ga kliknete, odete na internet i pogledate bankovno stanje, online banking i tu kompromituje svoje informacije. Da li nam treba broj računa u rukama nekog zlikovca koji će da iskoristi to i da vas upropasti. Znači, da li nam takve stvari trebaju? Ne, sve što se dešava, prljav novac, korupcija, sve to mora prvo da krenemo da regulišemo naše vrednosti, a misli da su vrednosti u načelu evroatlantskog regiona prave stvari i mislim da mi treba da se fokusiramo na to i nadam se da ćemo u nekoj bliskoj budućnosti to i uspjeti da uradimo.
38% svih korisnika interneta preko mobilne mreže bilo je izloženo nekoj vrsti cyber napadu u 2013. Svako ko koristi pametne telefone može da bude izložen cyber napadu. Zato je potrebna i cyber odbrana. Saradnje i deljenje informacije su osnova u borbi protiv cyber kriminala.
We worked with Microsoft and Symantec and CrowdStrike for that. This was a 2 to 3 year, multi-year international effort, and the takedown occurred 2014, and it was fairly successful. We were able to take the Spotnet offline. The million computers were freed. 33% of them we were able to remove the virus from them. The remaining 70%, even though the virus still existed on their computer, it wasn't under the control of the criminal organization anymore. We had to work with 10 countries, and we had to work, while we were working with the 10 countries, we had to work with them to gather evidence, do search warrants, arrest warrants. It was a large operation.
Enhanced our capabilities to deal with cyber defense issues through an action plan to modernize our safety instruments, our technological safety installations to protect our network. We have centralized the control of the NATO network protection. We have set standards that need to be met in order to provide the highest possible standard of safety. We have established 2 rapid reaction teams which stand ready to go to places where intrusions have been of a sort that cannot be dealt with technologically. By technological means only. But they also are only applicable for the protection of the NATO network. Should nations wish these teams to intervene, then this is again a case-by-case question that needs to be then dealt with by the nations or by the institution.
Mi ako ne sarađujemo sa zemljama, mi ne možemo sami da funkcionišemo. Videli ste za ovaj problem cyber defensa da ako ne delimo informacije, jer to su pretnje koje počinju iz jedne zemlje, deluju na našoj teritoriji, organizovano u trećoj zemlji. Ako nemamo tu suradnju, mi ne možemo se odbraniti od toga.
Umjesto zaključka, danas čovek sve više zavisi i od tehnologije i od interneta. Alijansa ulaže napore da se suprotstavi, kako kaže, opasnom rastućem neprijatelju. Sofisticiranost opreme i napada traže zajedničko delovanje jer često je napadač u jednoj zemlji, oprema u drugoj, dok je žrtva ko zna ko na internetu u svetu. Novi neprijatelj traži nove rivale. Jedinstvo je očigledno potrebnije nego ikad.